Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at the top 10 horror movies of the 21st century. Now just like you and myself, this is our own list, this is my own opinion, and my list changes all the time. Not only is there more horror movies coming out every year, which could potentially reach the top 10 of the 21st century, but even the older movies on the 21st century list can go up and down depending on how I'm feeling. So this list at the moment is my top 10 as it stands right now. And at number 10 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. This movie came out during the boom of the horror remakes in America, and I think it still stands the test of time. It is 20 years old now as this movie's been recorded, as this video's been recorded. And when a movie like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre gets a remake, I think everyone turns their nose up at it because they think you're not going to get any better than the original movie. And I think most of the time, in my opinion anyway, a remake really does outdo the original, but it also depends on when you were born and when you first watched the original movie. I'm not just talking about the Texas Chainsaw, I'm talking about any horror remake in general. I think if I'm watching a film in 2003 and I've got a complete disconnect to a movie that came out in 1974, generally speaking, I'll probably like the new movie more than the old one because I didn't grow up with the first movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I did see the original one before the remake and I absolutely loved it, and I still love it to this day. However, there's just something about the remake that feels more gritty about it, even though the original is this guerrilla style filmmaking. I think the 2003 remake is almost like its equivalent in 2003. There's just something about it that just looks so shocking and raw, and I'm pretty sure, I think it's the same cinematographer that does the original that does the 2003 remake, and you can tell because it just looks so unique. I know I've seen a lot of remakes even during the time of the Texas Chainsaw that it just feels a little bit too fluffy, like The Fog for example, but this one it just feels so real gritty. Leatherface is absolutely amazing in this one. The whole family dynamic is amazing and scary. Sheriff Hoyt, unbelievable. And even the characters that are getting chased throughout the film, Jessica Biel's character, everyone in this film is absolutely amazing. So I think this one, it stands the test of time. I never thought I'd say that because it's now 20 years old. I loved it back then, and I think I love it more now. And the number 9 is Evil Dead, another remake on the list. And just like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's just something about this one that I prefer over the original. The original for me is the worst in the franchise, the Evil Dead franchise, but it's still an amazing film. That just shows how strong the Evil Dead franchise is. But the remake, it just does everything so well. It's scary. It's unlike Army of Darkness and Evil Dead 2. Although they're great films, they're quite funny, and sometimes the comedy takes you out of the horror. Whereas Evil Dead Remake, there's nothing funny about it. There's so much blood used in the film. All the death scenes are disgusting. But I think with an Evil Dead movie, you have to have a disgusting film in order to enjoy it. I know that some franchises don't require that, like the Halloween franchise, but franchises like Saw and Evil Dead, I think the more blood, the better. The more gruesome the death, the better. And Evil Dead has that in droves. And even when you think the movie's just about done, you get that ending, and the ending is absolutely astounding. So yeah, Evil Dead, unbelievable. And at number 8 is A Quiet Place. You know, you go to the movies and you hear people eating their crisps, or they're talking, or they're on their phone. Something like that always happens in the cinema. Even in Glasgow, where I'm from, we usually get quite quiet cinemas, which is a blessing. But you do get sometimes a little chat or movement, etc. But the experience that we had with A Quiet Place was like no other. Even A Quiet Place Part 2. In this movie, A Quiet Place, there was not one person speaking, nobody on their phone. I don't think anyone took a drink. No one took a bite to eat. It was completely silent from start to finish. And that's testament to the movie, because I didn't think a movie like A Quiet Place would work on the big screen. Yes, it'd probably work at home because you're at home and you can pause it, but in the cinema, it was risky. But if the movie's good, then your audience will pay attention, and the fact that the cinema was completely quiet all the way through it just shows the testament to the movie, because it was so interesting from start to finish. It was a unique premise from start to finish. I love the fact that you don't see much until the very end of the movie. Some people say they'd rather not see anything at all, but I quite like the fact that we did see the alien at the end and we got a bit of an explanation at the end of the movie. Of course, we got a sequel after that explained a little bit more, but I liked what we got in this film. I love the family in this movie, even though you don't hear them speaking that often, if at all. You just know it's a tight-knit family, especially with what happened at the beginning of the movie, which was horrendous for the family. And the fact that it happened at the beginning of the film makes us all love the family and just root for them regardless. So if a movie can do that to you, I was absolutely crying all the way through the movie as well, especially at the end and the beginning of the film. If a movie can do that to you and keep you quiet, it's got to be on your top 10. And then number 7 is Hereditary. It's one of these films that before I watched it, I thought it was going to be one of these pretentious movies that I would maybe understand, but feel like it's overhyped. I saw all the reviews for it before I saw the movie. I read the reviews, I saw the trailers, and I just thought it seems a little bit too pretentious for me. And I do love the arty movies that are subtle. This one seemed like it's not subtle, but like myself and like any other people, you give a movie a chance before you ultimately rate the film. And when I watched it, it wasn't anything like I thought it would be. It wasn't pretentious. Yes, it was very artsy. It was a very elevated horror movie, as they call it, but it had good reason to be so. The story was amazing. I think it didn't throw all the story in your face. A lot of the time, you had to decide for yourself where you think this movie is going. And I think that's what I love about films like Hereditary. There's some really horrible scenes in the movie. There's some scary moments that don't really give you a jump scare, but you take a step back and you're like, whoa. There's a scene where the boy's in his bed and his sister's standing there in the corner after she had her head, was it after her head chopped off? I can't remember. But she was standing there and her head falls off like a bowling ball. And I get a big massive fright, even though there's no jump scare in that scene. So the movie just does things to you and it leaves a lasting impression on you right to the very end of the movie. And mix that in with the outstanding performance by Toni Collette. Unbelievable. And then number 6 is The Conjuring from 2013. This is a film, unfortunately for a lot of people, with every Conjuring universe movie that comes out, people don't really consider the original movie a good film, and that's hard to read because when the movie came out, everybody was blown away by it. When I say everybody, the majority of people were blown away by this film, but with every sequel, with every spin-off, people don't look back fondly on The Conjuring, but I look at every movie individually, and The Conjuring stands on its own 2 feet. Without any other Conjuring film in the franchise, this one is a powerhouse movie. When I went into this film, I didn't know we were going to get an exorcism at the end of the film, but we did. And I think some of the exorcism scenes in The Conjuring outdo some of the Exorcist-based movies out there, even some of the movies in the Exorcist franchise. This is a film that it's got so many great moments in it, so many scary moments in it. I fell out with these haunted house movies over the years because we weren't just getting any good ones anymore. They were all just kind of mediocre and generic. But then James Wan came along with The Conjuring and completely blew me away. One thing you need to have in a haunted house movie, not just the jump scares, etc., is a really good family, a family you can get connected to. And I just love the whole outlook of this family. They're so positive, even when the bad things are happening. They can't just up and move. That's something I read online from people that annoys me. When you're a kid and you see a haunted house movie, you always say to the screen, just leave. But as an adult, you just can't leave a house that you put your mortgage into and you've moved into and all your money is in. You can't do that. So as an adult, I understand that. And I think that's why I love watching The Conjuring as an adult, because I know straight away you put all your money into a house, you just can't up and leave unless something really drastic happens. So yeah, the movie feels realistic, even in an unrealistic story. Absolutely love it. And then number 5 is The Loved Ones from 2009. This is probably the most unknown one on my list. It's an Australian horror film from back in 2009. I think it got a release in maybe 2012 in the UK. But this film is just one of those films that just sticks with you all these years. I love Australian horror films. I think a lot of people do. But this is the one that's just escaped most people. It had a villain in it called Lola, who's one of the greatest horror villains of all time, even though she's only been in one film and not a lot of people know who she is. The storyline itself is about this girl who is obsessed with this boy. She asks him to the prom and he says no very politely, but she doesn't like this and now there's her dad, and they kidnap the boy and they torture him in the house. I won't give too much away, but the film is just unbelievable. There's some scenes in it you just have to look away, involving a drill, for example. The film unravels certain things as well, which is great. And the way it's shot, the way it looks, you can tell it's Australian, even without listening to the accents. It's just one of these authentic looking Australian films from just over 10 years ago. I'm going to be doing a review for this film, so I don't want to give too much away or say too much about The Loved Ones, but just know it's one of the best horror films of the 21st century. And at number 4 is It from 2017, and this might be cliche because a lot of people loved the film when it came out. It's a very popular horror movie, and I know that if you've got a popular horror movie on your list, you're not very cool, you're not very artsy, but I have to be honest, It was a fantastic adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Some people call it a remake, and I can understand why you would think it's a remake, but it's got nothing to do with the original miniseries that came out in 1990. This is an adaptation of the Stephen King novel. Therefore, it's an original movie, and it's the first movie called It as well, because obviously the 1990 ones are a TV show, a TV miniseries. So when I first saw the trailer for It, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see this. I absolutely loved the miniseries growing up. It was one of my favourites growing up as a kid. I loved Pennywise, and I didn't know if we were going to get a better Pennywise than we did with Tim Curry. I don't think we did get a better Pennywise, but we got a different one that rivals the Tim Curry Pennywise and also honours Tim Curry at the same time. And it's the same with the kids as well. I absolutely love the kids from the 1990 miniseries, and I'm always going to compare because that's visually what you compare it to, which is why some people call it a remake. But the kids stood on their own 2 feet as well. Pennywise did. The story was amazing. It expanded the first half of the miniseries in ways that I never thought I would love, and I absolutely did. The movies are a lot better than the miniseries. The miniseries has dated quite a bit, but the movies themselves are pretty scary. And I think the movies themselves, I'm an adult, so I don't get scared that often with films anymore because I'm an adult, but there's some really frightening moments in the film, and it's great that it's got kids in it as well. Pennywise obviously was a standout for me, but the kids themselves, the dynamic between the kids were amazing. I also like the fact that even if we didn't get an It Chapter 2, let's assume that it bombed at the box office, which it absolutely didn't, but if it bombed at the box office and we didn't get an It Chapter 2, I would still be happy with the one chapter that we got, because even though it left it open at the end, it was a nice conclusion to the kids' storyline, and that's what I love about this movie. And then number 3 is You're Next. This is one that just came out the blue. It was made in 2011, but we didn't get a release until 2013 in the UK, and I think a lot of people, or a lot of countries, didn't get it until 2013 either. But it's one of these films that just came out of nowhere. When the trailer hit online, it was a massive hit because everyone's like, whoa, this looks like a really good film. And when you went to see it, it was a really good film. And it's one of these films that was directed by horror fans. It was acted by horror fans and written by horror fans. You just look at the cast, it's full of directors, horror directors, famous horror directors as well, and horror writers. So you just knew that you got something really good on your hands. I was hoping that the direction was going to be great, and it was. I knew that with the writing team and the acting, it was going to be cool, but the direction, top notch as well. And I just love those isolated home invasion films with people with really scary costumes and unique costumes as well. And the kill scenes in it were amazing. And I know that people say, oh, we need to get strong female characters in horror movies. Look at You're Next. We've got a strong female character that didn't hit us over the head. She was just naturally strong. She was quite mystique as well because we didn't know much about her, and she was a survivalist, and the way she took out all the bad guys in this film was top notch. The kill scenes were great. The story was fantastic, and the acting was also great as well. Some of the build up of the kill scenes were amazing as well. You've got this girl who wants to do a run out in the house to try and get away, and there's this wire going across, and we just knew what was going to happen, but she didn't. And it's great that when the audience are a step ahead of the characters, it just adds that dynamic to the movie. So the movie itself, unbelievable. And then number 2 is The Babadook. Now, I don't consider The Babadook a horror movie, but it is officially a horror movie, and everyone calls it a horror, so it's gone on the list. I see it more as a psychological drama about a woman who's dealing with loss and grief in the form of a horror metaphor. The Babadook. And that's the way I see it. Now, I know that some people went to watch this movie thinking it was going to be the next Insidious or the next Conjuring movie or Annabelle, and they didn't get what they were looking for. And that's all down to the marketing for the film. The marketing was all wrong. It was marketed as this really jump scare horror film with a horror monster in it. And it's not that. It's just a psychological drama, and it has horror elements to it, but that's in the form of the metaphor with the Babadook book and the Babadook that comes to get you. This woman is dealing with a mental illness, and the way that she's formed her mental illness on her son is haunting. Her son is obviously a boy with ADHD or some sort of attention deficiency, and she's dealing with loss and grief, and she's got this kid in her ear constantly, and it's how she deals with it herself. And the way she deals with it, the way it's directed is done tastefully. I had a family member who had a similar illness to Essie Davis's character in the film, and the way that she portrays someone with that type of illness, it's unbelievable. I had a tear in my eye all the way through the movie. The acting by Essie Davis is some of the greatest acting I've ever seen, not just in a horror film, but of all time. I've no idea why she wasn't even nominated for an Oscar for her performance, because it was a powerhouse performance. The direction by Jennifer Kent as well. No idea why she wasn't even nominated for an Oscar, because the direction in this film is just unbelievable. Some of the greatest direction you'll ever see in your entire life. But again, if you go into this film thinking it's a straight up horror film, you will be disappointed. But if you go into it and look at it from the inside, see it as a psychological drama about a woman dealing with grief and loss, you'll be blown away. Because this movie, you look at a film like The Whale with Brendan Fraser, that's praised to the high heavens, and it's a similar film, but just got horror metaphors behind it. If you watch it like that, you'll be blown away. So The Babadook, it's an unbelievable movie. And the number one is It Follows. For those of you who know me and follow my channel, you'll know that that's no surprise whatsoever, or follow me on social media. It Follows is, to me, the greatest horror movie of the 21st century. You always get a movie that comes along, and I say this in jest, every 18 years a movie comes along and blows you away. In 1960 we had Psycho, it blew us all away. 18 years later we got Halloween from 1978, we were all blown away. 18 years after that, we got Scream in 1996, we were all blown away. And then 18 years after that, we got It Follows in 2014. Absolutely blew me away when I first saw the film. The premise itself is completely unique. It's things that we've seen before in a roundabout way, but they take that unique aspect, that unique approach to it. Now, for me, Halloween is the greatest horror movie of all time. And when you watch It Follows, you can tell that the director is easily influenced by John Carpenter. The way the film was directed, the cinematography, even down to the score by Disaster Piece, is all inspired by John Carpenter and Halloween from 1978. So when you've got an inspiration with Halloween in your movie and you do it right, then you're bound to have a masterpiece on your hands. And that's exactly what It Follows is. It is a horror masterpiece. There's some haunting moments in it that don't give you a jump scare. In fact, I don't think there's any intentional jump scares in the movie. It's just what you see on screen that gives you a fright. Like you see that big tall man coming towards the girl in the hall. Absolutely frightening, but there's no jump in the film. You've got the main girl walks into the kitchen and sees the half-naked girl walking towards her, peeing herself. That's scary, but no jump scene. So the film is done right. If you want to make a horror movie without all the stupid, cheap jump scares, just look at It Follows. It's an absolute masterpiece. I'm looking forward to They Follow that's coming out next year. I've got high hopes for it, but It Follows on its own is the best horror movie of the 21st century. So what are your thoughts on that list, guys? There might be films on my list that you don't agree with, and that's absolutely okay. There might be films missing from my list. It could be the fact that I've seen it and I just don't like it as much as the top 10, or I haven't seen the film, and that's quite interesting. So I want you to leave your top 10 down below, or let me know what I've missed out, and I'll let you know if I've either seen it and didn't like it as much, or if I haven't seen it and it could be on the list if I had seen it. But leave your list down below, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of my top 10, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
Be right back!
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played Skin the Cat?
I want to know!